Hello Internet, welcome back to Tromsø Twilight, the channel where I, Vincent, talk to you about books, movies, music that I find interesting, that I enjoy, or a combination of the two. I haven't been talking as much about music recently, and there's some really nice stuff been released in the last couple of weeks, so I'd like to touch on some of these new releases over the coming week or so. The first one that I'm going to talk about is the recently released album by the rock band Deftones. The album is called Private Music. Now, I haven't read anything about their intentions with this album, about, how they made it. I don't know really how other people have received it, except that I've noticed that it's been getting some coverage. And I've listened to it kind of every day for the last few days, on the way to work or on the way home, or when I've been walking my dog. And I've been making some mental notes about the album to share with you, but I'm not going to try to claim any kind of specialist knowledge about it. I just want to tell you one person's experience of this record. All right, let's do it. My Mind is a Mountain is the first track on the album. The album opens with a riff, this kind of quite slamming, crunching riff that reminds me of Swans, but a lot faster. Like if you slowed this riff down, it could be on a Swans album. So that's like a real attention grabbing opener that I really like. And then it switches into the verse riff, which establishes the song as being in 6/8. Deftones write a lot in kind of a waltzing 6/8 type of groove, and with melodic vocals over the top. This kind of opening verse is very kind of recognizably in the Deftones wheelhouse. And then they go into a third riff where the bass and the guitars kind of switch back to four, like the intro. And I think maybe the bass drum also is in four, but the rest of the drums is maintaining this 6/8 signature. And this is something that they do throughout the whole song, is they kind of shift in and out of 4 and 6 in their timing, which makes the song kind of really sort of fluid and floating. And it establishes as well something that I noticed about this album, which is that the drummer is really showing up on this record. Like, he's always good, but this is a record where the drummer, Abe Cunningham, really gets to shine on this album. Now, I honestly couldn't tell you what this first song is about. As the album goes on, I kind of hear more of the lyrics, because Chino's vocals are mixed quite far back, and he often uses a lot of effects, and his writing is also very poetic. So it's difficult to get a handle on what the song is about. It's like the whole thing just gives you this kind of atmosphere and this kind of introduction to how the album is going to make you feel. It goes into the next song, Locked Club, and again, you notice immediately that they're kind of playing with rhythms. Like the riff and the vocals feel really natural together, but if you pay attention, it's like 4/4/2. So the start of the riff comes back earlier than you would maybe expect. And then the second riff, again, they go into triplets. And Chino is kind of doing a poem over the top of all of this, with like some really beautiful lines that jump out. One of them that I noticed especially was staring up at God from the water. Track 3, I don't know how you pronounce this, Ekdesis maybe. This opens with some music that kind of sounds inspired by Ministry or Nine Inch Nails. It has this kind of industrial feeling with this like really hard bass that kicks in, which has this kind of circular riff that is quite typical actually of some early Deftones stuff. But the singing, Chino's singing, really reminded me of Mike Patton, especially his more melodic work in Mr. Bungle, or the English band XTC. The chorus has these kind of huge chords, and it has this kind of bouncing groove. If I know I'm being very kind of concerned with rhythms, but in this one you've got the triplets again, but you have the drums playing on the 2, the snare hitting on the 2 and the 4, and the vocals, he's doing this kind of call and return with himself. So he's shouting and then he's singing back, shouting, singing, and it's just like really exhilarating. My feeling when listening to this third track is that it's just like completely ecstatic. Like it's an ecstatic piece of music, really exciting, and it makes you want to dance. And this is something that made me think about how rock music kind of fell out of fashion. I think it's because at a certain point people stopped making rock music you could dance to. This song really reminds me of when I was a teenager in the late 90s, and I would go to the local rock club and we would drink beer and we would dance for hours. And this is a song that would really make you Like if you'd gone down to the bar to talk to your friends, this song came on, you would go running back to the dance floor. Track 4, Infinite Source. Interesting that it's called Infinite Source because this song actually reminded me of the Death Heaven album Infinite Granite. It has that kind of like heavy shoegaze melodic feeling to it. It's also a very danceable song like the previous one. It starts with these kind of harmonics on the guitar on the riff that reminded me a lot of Zero by Smashing Pumpkins, but then when the verse comes in you have these kind of slamming chords over the first half of this riff rotation and then back to the background riff, so you have this kind of like, it's almost like blocks of sound. Works really well. And the vocals have this kind of 90s early emo feeling mixed with some kind of sunshine pop, almost Beach Boys type of influence, which is really painfully beautiful. And again, the drummer on this song is just amazing, but also really tasteful. I love this track. And then you get to track 5, Souvenir, and for me this is the first and maybe the only track that I like less. I don't dislike it, but I feel like it's kind of it's just not as enjoyable for me personally as the rest of the album. The reason for this is it has this rhythm, this groove, which is like da 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 da, which really reminds me of like U2, some of my least favorite Manic Street Preachers songs. It's a certain kind of quite recognizable like rock vibe that I think isn't as fluid or as exciting or as compelling as the rest of what they've been doing rhythmically on the album. But around the 2-minute mark, the drummer goes over to this kind of circular drum rhythm, which is really amazing. And this is also the song that kind of started to get me to think about what the concept of this album might be, because the vocals are all about like sleep, and it has this lovely floating kind of aspect, but it's also slightly creepy. He seems to be singing about dreams, about the point between sleep and being awake. Maybe like those hallucinations that you have when you're on the verge of sleep, or the difficulty you might have in just letting go and going into a different realm. The song kind of seems to be about that. And the last minute of the song is a kind of ambient synth composition that creates a transition into the next song. And that section I actually really love. And if this is a song about falling into sleep, then that kind of ambient outro really makes sense. The next song has a really similar rhythm in the opening to Souvenir. The next song is called CXZ. But actually it doesn't bother me in the same way, because it very quickly shifts to this kind of tom work on the drums and these guitars in the background that remind me a lot of like early Placebo, like the first Placebo album. And there's really creative use of delay on the vocals. There's a section with hand claps. You have some processed drums. So the song is like really immersive and intense. And I'm really struck by the singing on this 6th track, that Chino just sounds so young. I can't believe that this guy has been doing it since the early 90s. Track 7 is my favourite song, I think. I think it's between this one, the 3rd track, and a later song for my favourite song on the album. This is a ballad, and it's kind of more conventional than a lot of the rest of the record, but it's so good. Like, it starts with strummed guitar and some synths and guitar effects in the background. Again, it's in this waltzing 6/8 kind of feeling. And it's a song that seems to be about love, about worship, about devotion, but almost to the point of madness. It kind of makes me feel like this is a song about the time that we get on this planet with the ones we love, like the finite nature of life and the importance of love, but there's something painful about it. When the band kicks in at about the 2-minute point and the whole thing kind of takes off, and you get this feeling that like live, this would just be completely incredible. He starts singing like in this most incredible like soaring way. They have like a slight change on the melody, a kind of bridge that makes it even more beautiful and almost like transcendental. Makes me want to cry. I just think this song is perfect. Something I haven't mentioned about this album yet is that all of the songs kind of blend into one another. So as this ballad is ending, you hear this kind of sound, this kind of synthesized sound effect, and then it goes into the next track, Milk of the Madonna, which is this kind of straight rocker, where the chorus reminded me a little bit of Bodies by Smashing Pumpkins, like a slightly more bouncing version of Bodies. So again, like this song is a song that you could dance to, jump up and down to, mosh to if you're still into that. I'm too old for that. It has like classic Deftones vocals, which are like really intense and emotional without being angry or like macho. And then track 9 is kind of the first track where you get this sense that at one time Deftones were influenced by nu metal, or they had hip hop elements in their music, because the vocal is like shouted in a near kind of rap style. And it's funny because it gives me associations to Zach De La Rocha from Rage Against the Machine, but it also gives me associations to Lana Del Rey on her first album when she's singing that song National Anthem. Again, they're like playing with the rhythms in the song. I'm not going to bore you with what they're doing, but every time the riff restarts, it seems earlier than you expect every time. The outro of this track, Cut Hands, is just like extremely intense. And again, the lyrics seem to be about like states of consciousness, as if it's about like, maybe is it about passing out or slipping into unconsciousness, or is it about dying? Like many of them, this song kind of goes straight into the next song. So the next song, Metal Dream, kind of just introduces itself with a shift in the drum beat. And this is my other favorite track. The verse has this incredible groove to it, and the guitar playing is just like chunks of sound. It's like the whole verse to me sounds like a collage. Like Chino is kind of doing this poem over the top of these kind of like weird delay guitar sounds and this drum beat, but then breaks into a chorus that is like almost like a melancholy classic rock melodic power chorus. There seems to be another song about dreaming. I mean, it's called Metal Dream, but it also mentions dreaming a lot in the lyrics. And I start to think about like, is this a concept album about like sleeping in the same bed and being like with the one you love, but you're in your two separate worlds, private music? Is it like hidden worlds, about the psychological difference between devoted lovers? Or is it more kind of broadly about like different states of consciousness, slipping in and out between, dream, reality? And then the last song kind of supports that idea. It's called Departing the Body. The lyrics talk about night, about floating. It describes like a room in space. So is it about like astral projection, or about dreaming, or about dying? But it starts with this like real weird, spooky synth composition, and it also ends with that. So the album ends with that. And this main song itself, like it starts with a surprisingly low vocal from Gino. He tends to sing in a tenor register, but this is like a real close mic'd low voice that can remind me a little bit of Morphine or of the Norwegian band Ulver. And then the song itself is like based around a kind of repeating pedal on the guitar that reminds me a little bit of Where Is My Mind by the Pixies, but it's much more spooky. It has these beautiful close harmonies, and by the end of the song, the drummer is just playing more fills than he's playing rhythms. So it's like he's had this like tasteful, restrained creativity for the whole album, and then at the end, like you get like more synths in the background, and he just kind of starts to take off. Like, it's just so fucking cool. As I mentioned, there's an ambient outro, which maybe again kind of supports this kind of sense of like something like dreamy, floating. It has this very sort of woozy kind of sound to it. The whole album reminds me a little bit of the color green, and it's got this like bright green color on the cover, like an extremely green background with a white snake on it. But there's also like green related colors in the sonics of the album: purple, blue. It has in the lyrics and in the sound. It's kind of esoteric feeling. I think about sleeping. I think about slipping between states. I think about dissolving. I think about floating. It's like music that kind of holds you in this kind of like weird spacey state of mind, and at the same time, it's like has this kind of melancholy, beautiful, nostalgic, slightly pained but very warm sense to it, like to its emotional core. Rhythmically, musically, it's complex, but in a way that you wouldn't notice unless before you've listened to it a few times. And I just think it's also like the perfect length. Like you put this on, it takes you on this journey, and it lets you go long before you start to get bored. All right, those are my thoughts about this Deftones album. Jump in the comments, let me know if you've listened to it, what you think about it, and really be interested, especially if you have like a sense of like what you think it's about or what some of these songs are about. That's it from me for now. I'll be doing some more videos about music in the coming days and weeks, I hope, and maybe I'll see you there.